historical, I think.
What's that?
We have a public hearing tonight on the.
Yeah, we do.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. The hour being 7 o'clock. As Mayor Pro Tem, Mark Haynes, I'm calling the City Council meeting for the City of Laconia on March 28th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the City Hall chambers of the Armand Baldick City Council chambers. I would now ask Councilor Hamel to salute the flag, say the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Hamel.
Thank you.
Present is our recording secretary, Kathy Gargano. Katie, would you please take the roll, please?
Counselor Cheney,
Here.
Counselor Susie,
Here.
Counselor Littman,
Here.
Counselor Hamel,
Present.
Counselor Felch,
Here.
and Counselor Haynes.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay. On the agenda is item number 7, with the acceptance of the previous minutes. The minutes were of the March 14th meeting were distributed to the City Council on March 17th, 22. At that time, there were no changes. With no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. On our item number 8, consent and action items. The request to the topic is the request to hold a Juggernaut 5K on July 9th, 2022, and to be approved with the temporary traffic order 2022-02. The Juggernaut Fitness located on 24 Lexington Drive in Laconia has requested approval for a 5K race to be held in the city streets on July 9th, 2022, as shown on the map, which is included in your packet. Organizers of the race anticipate between 150 and 200 participants. Proceeds will be donated to the children's auction. There will be no enclosures of the streets, but the City of Laconia Police Department will provide personnel to ensure the safety of the event. I would like to ask the council to move and approve the request to hold a Juggernaut 5K on July 9th, 2022, and to approve the temporary traffic order 2022-02. So moved by Councilor Susie. Seconded by Councilor Felch. Is there any discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That's a 6-0 approval. Next item on the agenda is okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. Next on the agenda is item 9, citizens' comments for matters not on the agenda. This is the time set aside to address the council on matters that are not on tonight's agenda. If anyone would like to address the council, please come to the microphone.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, no online attendees.
Thank you. I'd just like to back up for a minute. I'd like to announce that I skipped item 5, which is the staff in attendance. Glenn Smith is at the table with the council. He's a finance director and he's also doing the IT. Wes Anderson is in the audience as the public works director. Okay, I As no one has approached, is there no one?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is, we do not have any interviews. Item 11 is appointments and nominations and appointments and elections. Okay, all right. The appointment of Kristen Larson as the alternative to the Concord Regional Solid Waste District Resource Recovery Cooperative to a 3-year term expiring on December 2025. Per the Concord Regional Solid Waste Resource Recovery Cooperative Agreement, each member community needs to appoint a board representative and an alternative. The city's current board representative is Public Works Director Wes Anderson. Assistant Public Works Director Kristen Larson has agreed to serve as an alternate on this board. The motion before us is to appoint Public Works Assistant Kristen Larson as the alternative to as an alternate, on the Concord Regional Solid Waste Recovery Cooperative to a 3-year term expiring on December 2025. Councilor Felch moves that, seconded by Councilor Hamel. Is there any discussion? Please raise your hand. Okay, it's 6-0. There are no communications on our agenda tonight. We're going to move to public hearing. The public hearing for resolution 2022-03 relative to authorizing application to $2,500,000 loan from the New Hampshire Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund for northern area of Lakeport Area Sewer Project and the appropriating funds. Somehow I've misplaced that. Okay. The discussion, the notice of the public hearing was made available on March 16th, 2022, addition to the Laconia Daily Sun, posted at Laconia City Hall, posted at the Laconia Community Center, posted at the Laconia Public Library and offices of the SAU on March 15th, 2022. I'm opening the public hearing at 7:08. Anyone wishing to address the council on this matter can come forward, please. And I only ask that you state your name and address. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, no online attendees have raised their hand.
Thank you. Seeing here and none, I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:09. Next, we have the public hearing on ordinance 2022-189 to amend the city code chapter 189 regarding sewer. Again, the public hearing on ordinance 2022-8189 to amend the city code chapter 189 sewer was held on March 14th, the city council meeting. In order to provide an opportunity for public input, the March 14th public hearing was recessed. An additional public hearing was scheduled for tonight, March 28th, 2022. Again, the notice of the evening's public hearing was made available in the March 16th, 2022 edition of Laconia Daily Sun, posted at Laconia City Hall, posted at the Laconia Parks and Recreation Community Center, and at the Laconia Public Library and the offices of the SAU on March 15th, 2022. It's 7:10, and I would open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the council on this matter, please come to the microphone, sir, and if you would just kindly state your name and your address for the record.
Good evening, gentlemen, lady. I'm Ian Bryson. I'm representing Country Club Shores Lot Owners Association. We're a development of 18 houses just off Elm Street, and we have a private sewer system, hence our interest in this ordinance. What I'd like to talk to you about, I have a few questions. First of all, I'd like to say that we support the implementation of controls over sewage into the public system. It's obvious it makes sense to do that. And we support those controls, any controls that are deemed to be necessary to be implemented, as long as those requirements are equally applied to all systems, including the council and the city system that we are part of effectively. So that's my first point. Our concern with this whole process is it seems to be conducted with undue haste. Everything's happening very quickly. It wasn't communicated very effectively. We only got to know about this by chance. So we came to the last meeting and we were frankly quite surprised that nobody got up and said anything. We were hoping to learn something about this and the potential impact to our community, but we effectively didn't learn anything. So we came tonight prepared to ask the questions that we had on our mind. I think the problem we have with this ordinance is that it lacks definition. It lacks any kind of detail over what the obligations will be for the owners of the private systems. We'd like to see that defined much more carefully and much more rigorously so that we know exactly what our members, our association is there for in terms of cost. The details that have been published don't seem to take any account of the size or the scope of the systems involved, and they could be applied to any size from a major sewage plant to a small system, either a gravity fed or a pump system, typical of some of our private developments here. So, we need to understand before this goes ahead what the implications are for our members, because, many of our members are on fixed incomes. I would say about 50% of our residents are fixed incomes. And an estimate of $5,000 to $10,000 annually was thrown out in the Laconia Sun. Well, just so everybody knows, for our community, that represents something like an 8 to 16% increase in annual fees that we'd have to budget for and levy on our residents to make sure we're equipped to cover it and financially. So the other thing I just wanted to point out was that the list that was published in the, I can't remember the document, but there's a list of private systems supposedly affected by this. The accuracy of the list comes into some question as well, because we feature twice, and I can assure you we are only one entity. We feature as Hickory Stick Lane, I think, and we feature as Country Club Shores. So it does beg the question of how rigorously this was communicated out to the different private associations. I can't speak for any of the other associations here, but I certainly would be interested to hear if any others knew about this in advance, because we certainly didn't. I can tell you that the Water Authority knows where we are pretty accurately, because they managed to get us the bills with amazing regularity. So maybe a little bit of consultation between departments would clarify where all these private systems are. I think it also raises the question of who should bear the cost. I mean, we have an annual preventative maintenance and repair program that we conduct every year for our system, for the pumps, for the standby generator, and the work is done by reputable local sewage contractors or plumbing contractors. And that whole process is documented. We can make that information available on request to the council if it's required. But I think given the fact that we have that, we'd like to know what else do we need to do, and how much is it going to cost us? Just to say $5,000 to $10,000, I think, is not sufficient. So we'd ask that, you know, if this amounts to more of a reporting and inspection type operation, then the city council should take that on, because we already maintain our system, pay for the cost of that, and we're paying for the city system as well, which we don't get any advantage of. We don't get private, we have to pay for our own private system as well. So effectively, we're paying twice for some of these things. So I think the city should pay for, if it's a reporting requirement, then the city should pay for that. Again, we don't know what it is, and I don't think anybody else seems to know very clearly what it is. So for that reason, we'd request that the council delay passing this until at least there's a clearer definition of what's required, so that all of us who are eventually probably going to end up funding this can at least have some reasonable estimate of what our costs are likely to be. So any questions for me?
No, sir. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
speaking to us. Anyone else, please?
My name's Richard Mariano. I live at 32 Yale Place in Laconia. For those of you who aren't familiar with Yale Place, it's actually a individual family home road in Southdown. I'm also council representative within Southdown. Many of you know that Southdown is made up of condominium communities as well as individual family homes. And first of all, I want to thank everybody for the work that's been put into this. I certainly understand the need for aligning federal requirements with the state of New Hampshire and the Winnipesaukee River Basin project. I'd also like to thank the first gentleman, because a lot of what he has said, I want to echo. We're a much larger community within Southdown. We've got the complexity of single family homes as well as the individual condominium communities. And a lot of what has already been said applies to an even greater extent within Southdown. The only additional point that I'll highlight, again, under the heading of really needing more information, is on the reporting requirements. The February 28th report talked about some interaction among various departments looking at the original ordinance. Within the private systems, I don't think anyone's had a chance to have any input to develop an understanding of really what that needs. And I'd say more importantly, I can certainly understand that at some point we're going to be required to have reporting that parallels what the city and the state are going to have as well. I think there's a comment in that February 28th report that the Department of the DPW understands the issue here and is willing to help. I need to get a much better definition of what that help entails, because all too often through my career, we all know it flows downhill. And there's a big difference between what the strategy is and translating that strategy into execution. So until there's a better understanding on the ordinance, I really can't support highlighting it at this point. Any questions or comments?
No, sir. Excuse me. Thank you, sir. Anyone else, please?
Good evening, my name is Stephen Murphy. I live at 19 Chipper Lane in Laconia. I'm the president of Southdown Shores. I've also been in contact with the president of Long Bay. Between us, we represent 700 homes here in Laconia. Echoing a lot of the other thoughts, we're upset at the notification process, the lack of consultation, lack of clarity on what it means for our community. You keep, in the article, it mentions Southdown and Long Bay as if they are one community. In effect, the two communities represent a good number, 27 different HOAs within those two communities. They range in size from 2 homes to 48 homes, plus the single family homes that are within them. We disagree with this proposal. We feel that this is an additional tax on our community members. We pay exactly the same rate for our sewage as everybody else within the city. You just approved a loan for $2.5 million for another part of the city, which is a good thing. We're paying our fair share of that. And now you're asking us to pay more in a tax, that we have no details on what it actually involves. We understand, that this is part of your permitting process that you need to do in order to do this. The permits have been in place since 2009 without the need for this inspection. We agree that if this is needed, the city should do this as a common thing, because you will get benefits of size and cost. Putting this onto smaller communities mean that they've got to go out, they've got to find somebody. Finding people in this day and age on a regular basis is difficult. So you're just putting, a strain on those communities. The financial concerns are obviously problematic. If you look at our two communities, we contribute a lot of money to Laconia in our taxes. We get very little back from the city. Most of our members are not here during the week. Our load on the school system is very low. We don't complain about paying the taxes, but this one definitely feels unfair. And so we ask the city to reject this and to come up with a better plan that is more equitable for all the owners within Laconia. Do you have any questions for me?
Sir. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Anyone else, please?
I'm a member of the Long Bay community, the HOA2. I have a private home there. It's not a condo.
Sir, for the record, would you state your name?
It's Mark Parole.
Okay, thank you, sir.
36 Teddington Way. As a taxpayer, I'm not representing Long Bay, I'm representing myself. As a taxpayer, as a retired person on a fixed income as well, I pay all my taxes. I pay my water and sewer the same as everybody else does. I'm in a community that hardly anybody is there in the wintertime. We put very little pressure and stress on the sewer and water infrastructure. Additionally, we put very little stress on the Laconia community in general. Most of us are retired, older. Our kids are not with us. They're not involved with the educational system, yet we pay into that through our property taxes. This seems very inequitable to be passing this cost on to us as taxpayers. Additionally, there's other things that we don't get that we pay for. We have to have our own trash removed. The city, everybody else in Laconia doesn't have to have that done. We have to do that and we pay for that. So as an individual, I'm very aggrieved that this is being pushed onto these smaller communities and pushed onto the individual taxpayers of Laconia. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any, excuse me, is there anyone else, please?
Afternoon, Mike Mignault, 26 Carriage Lane. I just want to echo everybody else. They've been a great job doing this. I just think that you're actually pushing it onto a private community. We get nothing from you. He just said that we plow our own streets. We have to pay for our rubbish removal. We take care of our own stores. We just did a whole bunch of work in there. Almost looks like you're looking for a cash cow here. Somebody just to help you out with something that you made a mistake on down the road or you're gonna do, and you just want more money from people that shouldn't have to do it. We pay our own taxes. We have nothing from the city, truthfully. Why do you want to pick on a community? I don't get it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name's Kim Doherty. I'm from 105 Garden Circle. I'm also a resident of South Down Shores, and I echo what everyone else has said so well tonight. I also disapprove of this plan. And one of the things I'd like to point out is the fact that if we do have to assume these responsibilities, at some point, I would like to, it's like buying a house. You don't want to buy a house that's 38 years old, that you don't know what condition it is. You'd have someone come in and inspect the house first. If we had to take assumption for these sewers, then hand them over to us in good condition. You know, have inspections before they hand it over and let us know that they're in good condition. And then perhaps we could assume responsibility, but don't just hand off 38-year-old sewers and expect us to repair them from there. Any questions? Thank you.
No, ma'am, thank you. Anyone else, please?
Yes, hi, my
Yes.
name is Joan Travato. I'm on 25B Cardinal Drive, also in Southdown. And again, I just want to echo what everyone else has said. You know, to her point, I'm glad she brought it up. I know that the systems are very old. My question to you would be, what's been done in the past? How have they been inspected in the past? Who's done that? And who bore that cost? Because it's not something that I think it's ever been delineated on in anything that I've paid in the last couple of years. So again, you know, I'll reiterate, I pay same taxes as everybody else. We pay again for our trash removal, but we don't get any of the other benefits. So it doesn't seem fair to be able to now you guys just throw the, you know, the city of Laconia tell all these associations that they're now responsible for this cost without any explanation of how it's all even going to all work. You know, my question is, what's the definition of a private sewer system? Do we have a private sewer system? I don't know. I have no idea what that is. So until someone can explain in more detail what this all entails, I agree with everyone else. I think this should be tabled until we can get more information and make a better decision going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, please? Yes, sir.
James Wason for Race Point Road. I'm not quite sure what the rush is here. Obviously, you've been recertified before. You were last recertified in 2009, and you met all the requirements then. So why are you trying to burden these communities now? Didn't you do the job then, what you should have done, and you're trying to do it now? I mean, shouldn't you be looking at what's changed? The requirements are the same now as they were in 2009. So why are you trying to put it on these communities? Doesn't make sense. You know, obviously, it's just a cost shifting game. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else, please? Yes, sir.
Gordon Roberts, 54 Aberry Drive in the Long Bay Association. And I'd like to echo my opinions of those that have already spoken. And I just want to point out many of the folks that live in these communities, like myself, have been paying taxes for a number of years with the hope of retiring there someday. I'm about to become one of those. I'm now a full-time resident. Up till then, for the past 15 years, I have been a taxpayer, and want to reemphasize this association doesn't drain a lot of the resources of Laconia, where you see the major tax line items such as education, road maintenance, water, and sewer. We believe that, you know, things should be equally distributed when you're using a general tax base for these items. And you should take a step back and look at what's fair for all and do it right. Someone mentioned trash. You know, why do some folks in Laconia have to pay for trash and others don't? Where I used to live in a community, you paid for that as a service. So you could go to the trash dumping area and do it yourself, or have someone pick it up. I'd like to see, you know, other types of ideas to come forth of how you could take this added expense and do what's right for the community, rather than just how to just pass it on to the condo associations that surround the Lakes region, and the types of homeowners associations that also part of Laconia. It'd be nice, you know, for us to have, you know, people represent us that look for our interest as well. And a lot of us can't come up here and speak because they're part-time homeowners. And I'd like the representatives to reach out to the leaderships in these condo associations to get their opinions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Anyone else, please? Yes, sir.
My name is James Mailing from Opeachy Shores Condominiums. This just sounds to me like a sure case of discrimination. I mean, you're picking out condo owners just because I bought a condo instead of a house in a community now. I have a different rate because you've just taxed me. It's not a fee, it's a tax. Fee, everybody pays the same. You guys are trying to tax us separate. And I think you just headed down for a lawsuit. You know, I pay the same as everybody else, and that's all I expect to pay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else, please?
Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Smith.
2 online attendees have raised their hand.
Okay.
First is Marge Lynn.
Okay. Good evening, Marge.
Good evening. I
How are you?
also am, I am well, thank you. I am also from Southdown. Obviously, our cages were rattled because we read in the Laconia Sun that we were singled out in all of this to be carrying a burden for these costs. I would like to ask you, could you please answer that in fact you do intend to tax condo associations separately on top of the people who are using these facilities? Can you answer that?
I cannot, but I would have the Public Works Director address that, please. Wes?
No taxes go to pay for the sewage system. The rates that you pay for those who run water and sewer.
Thank you.
Go to pay the city's costs for maintaining our mains and paying the cost of the Winnipesaukee River Basin programs, interceptors and their plant. So everything that goes to the systems basically from the user fees from the sanitary sewer side.
Wes?
Yes.
While you're up there and we have a good group of people here tonight compared to the other night, could you explain why this came about, where it came from, and who's responsible?
For years, we've had the requirement for annual reports to EPA. They have recognized that all the municipalities are having problems and all they can expect to see is gradual improvement over time. Part of the issue that we've had here is the number of private sewer systems within the city. And we have actually before COVID slowed us down a bit. We're working through the process of
Stay in
updating
front of the mic, please.
updating our sewer ordinances to match what's required at the state and EPA level to bring the private sewer systems in for the annual inspections. It was purposely left vague because the EPA doesn't have set guidance. What it does have is an expectation of a plan of how they intend to maintain their system such that it limits sanitary sewer overflows. In certain type communities, that could be an inspection once every 4 or 5 years. And others, if it's fairly large, it could be, 1/6 of an inspection every 6 years, for that standpoint. So after over a period of time, it's done. The key portion that has to be done annually is the report of where you are in your process to meet all the rules, regulations, and requirements underneath the permit. Presently, we've been doing that for the city system, but we haven't been doing it for all the private systems because we just don't have the information. What this is the purpose of gaining that information, though we can include it into the reports that go to EPA. So like I said, it was purposely vague to give the opportunity for the various private communities to develop their plan based off of the age of the system, what the system's made of, how big it is, how small it is. So they're not having to obey or follow a certain set regulations that may not apply to them.
So Wes, how are they Where can they go or how are they supposed to know how involved they're supposed to get?
We are planning to have multiple classes and
Multiple
sessions.
what?
Multiple classes and sessions, really based off of what type of community and size of their system. You don't want to mix, a one street in with South Bay or Longdown. So we'll have different groups where we'll go through the process and help them analyze what they're going to have to do. We can't do it for them, but we're going to be there to help them in figuring out what's best for their community to meet basic guidelines that are put upon us by the EPA.
Also, Wes, in all these private communities, has the city installed any of the water and sewer there?
We got to break it into pieces
Okay.
because there's a different set of regulations for water. Water underneath those federal regulations basically have taken it not quite up to the house, but to a stop on that point. There is not the same regulations for sewage. So generally what has happened is that we go up to our main and take it past the property, whether you're a single family home or a condominium association, and they're required to tap their system into our main. So they own their system and they own it to the point it connects to our main, whether it's in the right of way or not. And then this follow-up is to get the data necessary to report back. We've been doing it for years. We've done it, before 2009, because that was the other permit required. We're just gradually, doing sequential improvement to get us up to meet the full requirements of the permit.
I think I still have the floor. May I ask him? I believe you mentioned that the individual streets you'll be looking at. How is it then that they are going to get your services and yet Southdown Long Bay, other kinds of condo associations who pay the same tax rates, the same amounts of money for our sewer and water would be feathered out to do this cost ourselves?
There is no difference in it. It's just a matter of how we put the groupings together for the classes purposes and the instruction. It's easier and more focused on one that we're able to have one or two streets in it versus one that has a lot. And we're just trying to group it for more efficient training and meetings.
That doesn't make sense to me. You said a few streets, okay, a few streets will get your services, but these communities, condos community won't, and we have to pay. Is that the way it's going?
We're not doing it for them. We're just lumping them.
You're having them do
training
it. You're having the
purposes.
street do it themselves?
We
I'm
have
very
s-
confused. Go ahead.
We have streets, we have developments or condominium associations in the city, which are one street long, maybe a couple hundred, 300 yards long. So we're grouping those together for the purposes of just for training.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to ask, Marge?
I'm still very confused. It's not clear to me at this point what he's trying to say or what any of you are suggesting who's going to pay for what. That's all I can say. And I hope you can clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Cheney.
Wes,
I
have we,
understand.
do I take it that the last time we inspected the sewers in the city was 2009?
Oh, no, we do of our system.
Yes.
It's the ones that the city owns itself. We do 1/5 of the sewers a year. So in a course of over 5 years, we do 100% of the city sewer systems, cleaning and inspection.
So there'd be no need for these communities to do it annually.
No, it's really dependent upon what the size of their system and what the age is. We have some that are 100 years old.
I suspect. And does the city do this work or do we contract with somebody to do the inspections?
We manage our effort, but we contract with large firms with the appropriate equipment to come through, do the cleaning and the TVing. Yes.
Go ahead.
A lot, of course, it's not just the lines, it's the manholes itself. So there's two pieces to it.
All right. Have we, and frankly, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would ask that we consider and ask Wes to get for us what the cost for each of these associations might be. I frankly, before I want to vote on this, want to have some idea what the costs we're talking about are.
Okay, I agree. Council Susie, I'd let you have the floor, but I'd also like to remind the council that this is a public hearing, so we'd like to hear from the public. So, but go ahead, Councilor Cheney.
I'll wait.
Councilor Susie, I'm
I'll
sorry.
wait till we're done with the public hearing, then we'll ask
Okay.
the questions of Wes.
All right, thank you. Mr.
Mayor
Smith?
Pro Tem, Dave Wood has raised his hand.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Wood.
Good evening. Hi, guys. A quick thing here. It seems like we're playing with the law of unintended consequences. I'm sorry, by the way, Dave Wood, 24 Dillon Way. We're in the Molten Cove community up here in the Weirs. And before I get to the unintended consequences, it seems to me that none of the bigger associations have been notified that there was even a rules change coming. We're only 42 units, which is, medium sized, I guess. But, Southdown, hundreds of people, Village of Winnipesaukee, hundreds of people, Meredith Bridge, hundreds of people. And it all seems like the burden's being pushed onto the individual communities. And while I appreciate our Public Works Director being vague, it's to the point of too vague. Saying that, well, you only have to get your inspection once every 4 years, once every 5 years, depends upon the size of the thing. But there's no rules in place here. We're changing the rules to the city, the laws that we're all going to have to abide by, and with no clear purpose other than making sure that our sewer systems are in good health. Well, if that's the purpose, then we should define that you have to have them inspected once every 3 years, once every 4 years, once every 5 years. And if it takes a community such as big as Southdown 6 or 7 years to get theirs done, then it's 6 or 7 years. They're huge. But back to the law of unintended consequences, because it's vague, but because it's a law, what happens when somebody doesn't? It doesn't actually end up being finished or done on time or what have you. We all pay the same sewer rate. We all pay the same water rate. So I don't understand why this burden shouldn't be borne by all instead of just individual communities. As pointed out by earlier, I'm echoing it all. I'm not going to repeat it. I don't understand why this is being done. What is the exact EPA regulation that we're not conforming to? What is, okay, the reason is, okay, clear water, the Winnipesaukee Basin, okay, fine, I can live with that. I can live with, having to have an inspection every now and then. But an annual inspection, we are 42 units, $10,000 a year would be an almost 10% increase in our condo dues just to cover the cost of an annual inspection. And it just seems that the burden is definitely not fair. It's biased to communities, condo communities that the city council and the zoning board have pushed upon the city because they like having condos, because they don't present a burden to the taxpayer, to the schools, and to the fire department, and to the police department. We're not presenting those burdens. So it's easy tax money when you're selling $800,000 condos on, Union Ave, because they're here once a year, twice a year, whatever, but we get all that tax money. And it seems to me that pushing an inspection burden is just another pay to play fee that the city doesn't really need to go down that path.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wood. Council Susie, did you?
I want to make sure there's.
Gentlemen, there was a gentleman in the back that had his hand up. Would you like to address the council, please? Okay. Yes, sir. If you just be brief.
What I'm trying to understand.
Sir, would you, just so the audience can hear you and
Again, my name is James Wason at 4 Race Point Road. The bit that I'm confused about here is, am I talking specifically about Southdown? I mean, obviously within Southdown, there are condo communities. I think it's 16 or 17. So they're going to have a plan. Then you got Southdown that has single family homes and condos. So there's going to be a double thing here. Have you thought that through? I mean, you're the one proposing the change.
Yeah, please.
That is really up to the Southdown Long Bay to figure out what's the most efficient way for them to do it. Whether they come up with a standard template for, you know, the whole association, the other associations underneath it follow that standard template. We would rather have them the flexibility to figure that out than tell them specifically how to do it, because we don't know everyone's particular situation.
Thank you.
Wes, if you,
Councilor Susie.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pro Tem.
Okay, thank you.
Wes, a couple of quick questions. Why is the immediacy of doing this right now?
There isn't an immediacy of it as you're thinking of. What we're constantly trying to do is the improvement that's required underneath the terms of our permit with the EPA. The piece that we need to have going is the process started to do the reports. In other words, the expectation, at least for the first year, might be is we've got our plan done on how we're going to do it, and we're going to get ready to implement it beginning, say, 2 years out. But it has gotten their piece together and how they're intending to meet the permit requirements of their sewer collection system. And a lot of it for the first year may just be, this is how we plan to do it if we have an issue in the sewer collection system in our association. You know, who do you call in the event of an overflow and you've got a spill? And how do you record, you know, how much is flowing out of it? Who do you report it to? Because we have a reporting requirement for a certain number of gallons that we have to report to EPA. So they're going to have to report that to us so we can report it to EPA. And all that gets tracked into a system, but goes to EPA is one massive report from the city at the end of the year. So they know exactly at the end of the report how many spills that we had, what actions we took to correct those spills. You know, are we maintaining all of our sewer pump stations, you know, and what we have done. They don't necessarily expect us to do everything every year, but they're expecting us to do what we need to do to keep our system working.
Just one follow-up, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Why now? And let's say we've had all these private communities throughout the city. Why all of a sudden now, or is this something new?
This is not nothing new. This is back from before 2009. We're just gradually getting our system in place to meet all the terms of our permit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Felch.
Yeah, so go ahead and stay up there for a minute, Buzz. Basically, what we're saying is, I own a home. I'm responsible for my sewer line from the street where it connects into the main line up to my house. So I'm responsible for everything to do with that. So any of these condo associations, same thing, from the main line into their systems, all the houses, they're included. Now, I don't inspect my line from the street to the house. Can you explain the difference?
It really comes in volume. And that's the thought behind it. For a single family coming out, it's the amount of flow that's coming through that. As in the condo associations, you start aggregating the amount of flow, so your problem gets larger if there's an issue. That's basically the process behind it. EPA doesn't require us to, you know, worry about one single family. It's when they start aggregating, the problem magnifies enough that they're concerned about it.
Is there a way to draw that line?
And part of that is it's going to be through the process of meeting with everybody. Where is their system? A short 200 may not need it, but if they've got a pump station that all of it flows to, they may need to report it because of the pump station. So there's all sorts of vagrancies, and there's too many vagrancies for us to put into a regulation.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak? Sir? I'm sorry, sir. You did have to come to the microphone.
Mark Peralt, 36 Teddington Way. The question I have for you is, who's ultimately responsible? The city is ultimately responsible to the EPA. Is that correct?
Ask him.
Fine. So you want to now take your primary responsibility and decentralize it. Just the fact that you're going to decentralize this, you're going to have to audit it. You're going to have to control it. You have to get all the reporting to do with it. Certain things are better done centrally and managed in a uniform way. Now you're going to have all these different communities trying to figure out what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do it, what the reporting is going to be. Every community is going to have their own regulations to be dealing with their community with. And I just think you're setting yourself up for an absolute nightmare here going down the road. Just a point.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one last comment, and I'm going to close the public hearing.
I would just like to say that, within Southdown, the city's already adopted one of the villages. There's a lot, it's not one big system collecting from all the homes and going into the thing. It's going in at numerous places because there's rights of way and there's city sewage running in different places along the railway tracks, down the side of community. So it's a lot of little systems. So treating it as one big one is totally inappropriate at this point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Councilor Lippman.
I'd like to request that we not close the public hearing, but have a continuance, because I think we need more information from other folks. Would like to see a more comprehensive presentation by our Public Works Director. Would like to get some sense of how other communities that are similarly situated are managing it at this point in New Hampshire, if possible. So, obviously, just to be clear to the people who have come and testified, the process for introducing proposed rules has been followed here. There was public notice. The city's website has every month the same agenda packet that we get. You can get as quicker than us, depending on when you go online. And I know that some people don't like to follow it. That's where the newspaper is helpful in terms of lifting things up that might be of interest to a larger group. So nothing is finalized here yet. It's a proposed rule, and we're taking public comment. We're glad that you came out tonight to express your concerns. I think you want to learn more. I think the council wants to learn more, and that's why I'm suggesting to, rather than closing it, is to have a continuance so that we can take more input.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Just a second.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, there are 3 people who've been waiting patiently online with their hands raised.
Okay, all right, go ahead, Mr. Smith.
First is Mr. John Farrell.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Farrell.
Hello. I'm John Farrell. I'm up in Captain's Walk in South Downs. And we have, well, as mentioned earlier, we have only, I think, 10 or 12 in our little village. I don't think it has tremendous capacity, especially when, probably half of them are, more summer residents. So, it's very unclear. It's only a 200-foot pipe. I think it goes directly downhill, gravitational, right into the main line along Poggers Bay. It's not clear, what type of inspection would be, why does that need to be inspected versus like maybe a large apartment complex that, from my understanding, is not impacted by this inspection requirement, or our large school systems in the college communities. These other very much larger storage systems, private storage systems, have this requirement, and it just seems rather, I don't understand the definition as being based on who owns a sewer line, private, one pipe going out to a street, versus these other, private organizations that all have sewers. It just seems that there's a definition needs to be refined to reflect the capacity, as was mentioned before. So I would just like some input on exactly what, how is this private sewer line going to be defined? The other question is, the point of all this, it's Lake Winnipesaukee. It's beautiful water. We want to keep it clean. Everyone's in favor of that. But there's things like sewer system, the septic systems. Are there requirements by EPA to make sure inspections are occurring routinely? State I used to live in, you sold your house, you had to have a septic inspection, make sure that sold and everything was intact. when I purchased up here, nothing like that. And but I don't have a septic, so that's why I'm at this meeting. But there must be, in terms of costs, I think we have to think about what is efficient, and the final point of the EPA is making sure the water quality is clean.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Farrell. I would like to remind the audience that this is a public hearing, and this will be taken up under unfinished business. Mr. Smith, I think we have two more people.
Now one more.
Okay.
Apologize in advance. Joe, I think it's Bayusek, is how you pronounce the name?
Okay, good evening.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, you got my name right. It's Joe Bayusik. I live at 31 Carriage Lane here in Laconia, which some of you may know is part of the Willow Pond Village within Long Bay. That's 38 homes, one of 5 villages of 179 homes. In addition to the 5 villages, we have Long Bay proper. So that's 6 total sewer systems. I also am a homeowner in Southdown at 13 Darwin Place, the newest village, where we're only 7 homes. There's 20 villages plus Southdown proper for a total of 21 sewer systems. Now, my question to you, or to Mr. West, I didn't catch his last name. Have you guys actually overlaid tax maps relative to sewer maps? Because I can assure you, none of the 700 and change homeowners in Southdown and Long Bay know where these pipes all are and on whose property they're on. But they are a total of 27 or 28 independent sewer systems. Each of those villages in Southdown and Long Bay not only pay their Laconia taxes, but I pay my Long Bay dues, I pay my Willow Pond dues, I pay my Southdown dues, and I pay my Darwin Place dues. We all maintain our roads separately because the city doesn't pave them, the city doesn't plow them. So we have to maintain all of our infrastructure costs ourselves. So if this burden is going to be put on us, you guys put in the paper, it's Southdown. No, Southdown is 21 villages. It's not Long Bay, it's 7 villages. Those are all separate systems. And you would have to identify where these pipes are for us. We don't have these maps. These are city maps. I'm sure the water department has them all. But I really think you have to break it down per village and stop calling it Southdown of 499 homes, because it's not.
All right, thank you, sir. The hour is 7:57, and I am closing the public hearing. Next on the agenda is.
I made a request if we could have a continuance as opposed to a closing of it to get more information, which would then be indicative to the public that's here that they don't need to stay because we're going to collect more information and not have to take it up. That's what I'm proposing, to be courteous to the people that are here, that I think the sentiment at the table is we need more information and we're not going to act on it later in the meeting. So that's, maybe I'm alone in that, but I don't think I am.
Councilor Lippman, are you making a motion, please?
Yes.
Okay. There's a motion on the table, seconded by Councilor Cheney?
Yes.
Okay, all right. The public hearing has been closed, but this issue has been continued to, I believe it will be.
Can we leave the date open? Because I think this is going to take more than
Absolutely
2 weeks to.
Friendly amendment?
Yes, open to the reason I don't want to table is because I want to get more information and.
I'm with you on that,
Yeah.
Henry, but I think we ought to make it
Yes.
subject to, we'll call another public hearing once we've had a chance to review more of this. So rather than say April 5th or something, I'd like to just leave it open until further public notice of a public hearing. I have, when we get to the part of the meeting where we're supposed to vote on this, I understand Henry's, Councilor Lippman's motion, and I second it, but I want to say a few things about this, and if it's all right, I'd like to speak now if we're not going to deal with it in the later part of the meeting.
Sure, that's fine.
I mentioned briefly, I'd like to make it very clear.
Excuse me, we had a motion on the table, and
Right.
I'd like to, and that would,
We discussed.
and
the
you
mo-
accepted that as a
Yes,
friendly
I
amendment?
did.
That we're going to leave an open date. There's a motion on the table. Please raise your hand if you're in favor of the motion. Madam Clerk, there's 6 votes. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been continued to another public hearing, subject to the fact that we are going to gather much more information, and we'll do our utmost best to keep you informed. Next on the agenda, council comments. Councilor Faust.
Yes, I just wanted to let everybody know that we had the Robbie Mills Pool Tournament, which raises money for the children's auction and the Boys and Girls Club. And with the help of our community and lots of organizations, we were able to raise $8,998 to go out to those communities. So thank you to everybody that was involved.
Thank you, Councilor Felch. I'm going to just wait for a second till the room clears. Okay, is there any other council comments? Councilor Cheney.
I'm sure we've been told, and I've just forgotten or something, but weren't we dealing with lights at the O-Pee-Chee Skate Park?
I can speak to that a little bit.
Go ahead, Councilor Felch.
There's an organization that's raising money for that. I was at the, and you know that too as well. We were at the meeting for Parks and Rec. And they're pretty close to raising all the money that they need to be able to put those lights in. So you should see it pretty soon.
I'd like to see it pretty soon. I feel bad about driving by every night and seeing parents with their headlights on. to try and-
There'll be 2 lights. They'll be controlled by a switch.
Yeah.
They'll go off at 10 o'clock.
I wonder if we can do solar power for them. Think about it.
Well, I believe there's electricity right there anyway.
Yeah.
So they'll just work off of that. There'll probably be LED lights. So.
Like I said, there's a timer on them. So go like a half an hour or so. And if it goes off, they can turn it back on, but then they'll go off completely at 10 PM.
Anyone else? I'd just like to bring to the council's attention, and I know that we're gearing towards the end of the hockey season, but I'd like to compliment Andrew Trumbull and the New England Wolves Hockey Association that plays out of the Merrill Fay rink. Not only this year did they again win, I think this is the 3rd season it was interrupted, but they have won their community award for volunteerism. And that's in their organization. That's the Eastern Hockey League. So that takes into consideration the Eastern Seaboard. And not only that award, but the senior team in the EHL is going to for the first time, to the Frozen Final in Providence, Rhode Island. So the games are upcoming this weekend, but I'd like to congratulate them on a great season and thank them for all the volunteer work they do in the community. Councilor Lippman.
If it does not interfere in the procurement process, I'd be curious where we stand with the re-procurement RFP on solid waste collection.
Thank you. With
It's
the
due
indulgence,
on
I
April
think Wes
15th.
can address that.
Thank you.
April 15th, they're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All set, Council Lippman?
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Wes.
Next on the agenda is committee reports. Is there any committee reports? Liaison,
I know
Councilor
there's-
Susie.
I know that there's an item 27, I'm not sure what it was there for, but the appointments and the appointments committee, we had our first meeting Last week, we interviewed approximately, I think, 14 or 15 people for different positions throughout the city. I thought it was one of the more productive meetings we've ever had because we were able to talk to a lot of people about a lot of different things, get their inputs, especially for the ones who are looking for reappointments. We're gonna have another meeting later this week to go over that and make recommendations to the council. So far, so good.
Thank you, Council.
Just one update for people who've been following the Finance Committee's review of the welfare guidelines. There was a request from the manager, Mr. Smith, for us to take a pause to let them catch up and work the guidelines a little bit, so we have a better document to continue our work on. And so we'll pause, I think, the next two meetings from having a pre-meeting of the counts of the committee on this. And I don't know if I have that correct, Mr. Smith, but
That is correct, Council.
I'll be right back.
Is there any other committee reports? Liaison reports? Okay. Next on the agenda is citizens' request to comment on current agenda items. This is to allow citizens input on items that are on our agenda tonight. Sir, that's fine.
Protocol.
We were just I didn't mean to cut you off,
No, I
but we
just
were
wanted
right
to
in the
give
middle of something.
Councillor Cheney was he was going to say some more about the subject of the sewer ordinance. And then I wasn't clear as to when he was going to say it. I just wondered if he's going to say it later in the meeting, or is it closed?
Yes, Councillor Susan.
I think his plan is that he's gonna say something when we're supposed to have another, like, close the hearing and have a vote.
So he's going to
Not gonna
comment then.
vote. We're not gonna vote, but he has some words he wants to say then.
Okay, I just wanted to hear the words he was going to
That's
say. I didn't
quite
want to
all right,
miss
sir.
it. That's all.
Thank you.
Any other requests of the citizens to address the council? Seeing none. As far as the city manager's report, the city manager did include in our packets the city manager's report. I am not going to give the city manager's report. I would only ask the council that if you have any questions, we could wait until the city manager is back from his vacation, or if you think it's something that Finance Director Glenn Smith could answer, please feel free.
I think we should call the city manager.
Yes.
Okay.
Put him on.
I'm not sure how we'd get a hold of him, but
I also want.
Glenn might know.
A Teams meeting with a camera.
Yes.
He's not on Zoom.
I'm sure he's not. Next on the agenda is new business. There's a request. Just gotta find it here. There's a request for authorization to use impact fees revenues to offset the cost of the repair of Beach Street. Public Works Department is seeking to restore the roadway by repaving Beach Street and the replacement of the sidewalk on the north side of the street with gravel and loam. The project cost approximately $46,000. The Public Works Department requests authorization to use $16,000 in impact fee revenue to offset the project. The approval of this request will reduce the balance of the impact fees available to the Public Works Department projects by $16,000, leaving a balance of $10,095.96.
10,000.
10,000, 10 million, yeah, right, okay. Sorry about that.
Wes had to think. wow.
Rest-
Council's looking happy.
Before it says, I'd like to move the council's authorization to use the impact fee revenue in the amount of $16,000 to offset the costs of repairs on Beach Street. Is there a motion?
So moved. Yep.
Council Felch moves, seconded by Councilor Hamel. I'd just like to comment before we take a vote that the people on Beach Street have been very patient and it's finally coming to fruition. So the motion is on the floor. I would like to take a vote. All those in favor? 6 votes in affirmative.
Might want to pause. Let her get her.
Yes. Thank you, Councilor Littman. All set?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Under unfinished business is the future of the wooden bridge over the railroad tracks on Centenary Avenue. I'm going to read the first couple of paragraphs and the state's current 10-year transportation improvement plan, 2021 to 2030, included the removal of the wooden bridge on Centenary Avenue in 2025. The first draft of the next 10-year Transportation Improvement Plan 2023 to 2032 will also include the removal of the wooden bridge on Centenary Avenue on 2025. Wes, could you, instead of me reading all of this, could you just give us the overview of that, please?
Basically, the profile of the bridge is fixed because it's over an active railroad tracks. So we've got to keep the same distance from the rails to the bottom of it. So we can't change much. The state's going to put enough money to it. We've got to manage the project. We got to bid it. We got to do everything for it. Once it's done, city council's got to accept it from the state. And then it becomes us to maintain forever. It becomes part of the city street system.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, a question.
Go ahead.
Wes, just to make sure, as in, if we don't do this, they're gonna take it down.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just make sure that that's
It's
understood.
It's a wood bridge. We don't plow it during the winter time. We have no experience with wood bridges, so I asked the state who have several. And they say typically if you plow it, you got to redeck it every 10 years. If we don't plow it, we may get 15 out of it. And at current prices, just for the materials to redeck, it's about 50,000. And then you got to put labor on top of it. And we'll probably spend someplace around 2,000 to 2,500 this year's dollars every year to replace boards that warp and everything on it. The biggest challenge would be is our maintenance time for it. So we have to do it when the railroad is shut down, which is basically April 1st because they start prepping for operations again. So we've got to do it in our busy time of the year when we're either changing from fall to winter or we're changing from winter to summer. So that's going to present a little bit of an issue trying to get that as well as the docks and the wood decking on the boardwalk done in time for summer.
I'd like to ask, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'd like the council's indulgence. I am in the era. We need a motion to take this off the table. Councilor Cheney, Councilor Susie, all those in favor? Madam Clerk, 6 votes in affirmative. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So basically, it's still going to be a summer-only bridge because of the constraints of it. But in the wintertime, we open up the gate at the end of Week Street at the boardwalk end. So that's the second entrance. So it's good to have because Aqua Marina can tie up, their entrance was they're making deliveries on it. We just have to recognize it's going to be a increase in the amount of dollars that we go to support it, as well as time to get the work done in some critical times.
Councilor Felch.
So I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
If the bridge was to be taken down, would it be possible to put a road over the railroad tracks? And what type of cost are we talking?
The original plan that they had for the demolition of it, they had money in there to either improve the intersection down by Aqua Marina or improve the intersection by the boardwalk. And when we built, or we did Lakeside Avenue, we built that concrete pad that was there to handle heavy traffic. It's not a crosswalk type of sidewalk. It's built for heavy traffic.
Down
So
by
we
the-
didn't know which way it was going to go at that time.
So you're talking down by the pier area?
Yeah, down right there by the lobster pound or
Right.
the lobster, weather vane, that's it.
So that area could be left open year round?
It
Or is
would-
that a problem with,
From the infrastructure standpoint, we built it to be able to support it. Whether we want to do it from the tourist support is a different story.
that's what I thought.
Anyone else? Okay, I have a motion on the table. I move the city accept the wooden bridge on Centenary Avenue upon completion of substantial rehabilitation by the state of New Hampshire. And further, the city agrees to provide all further maintenance of the bridge and operate it in a seasonal manner as is the current practice.
So moved.
Seconded by, moved by Counselor Cheney, second by Counselor Susan. All those in favor?
We have a discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Counselor Lippman. Sorry.
So I don't know if you'd be open to a friendly amendment, but that would be that the agreement between the state and the city be brought to the council so that we can see it before it's finalized.
Certainly. Madam Clerk, did you get that? Yes, okay.
That this approval is conditional upon us reviewing the state's plan.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor? 6 votes in affirmative, that passes.
If I may say one thing, there will be no state plan. They're turning over the money to us. So we're the ones who are developing the plan.
But we
That's
still
the-
want to see the plan.
The agreement between,
That we will, yeah.
that's what we want to see.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Wes. Next on the agenda is the second reading of Resolution 2022-03 relative to authorizing the application of $2,500,000 loan from the New Hampshire Clean Waters Revolving Loan Fund for the Northern Lakeport Sewer Project and appropriating funds for the same. The Northern Lakeport Area Sewer Project includes North Street, Sheridan Street, Belvedere, and School Street. The sewer collection pipes on these streets are undersized and made of clay and make them susceptible to clogging. The pipes are experiencing significant groundwater infiltration. The sewer collection pipes in these streets are at risk of failure due to age. The New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services has committed funding through the state's Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund. Additionally, the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services has committed $7,470 and $747, $747,600 grant from the American Rescue Plan, which once approved will reduce the amount taken on the loan. To reduce the amount on the loan. The current project is currently in the preliminary design phase and scheduled for construction 2022 after the completion of the Elm Street Sewer Project. Approval will authorize the borrowing of $2.5 million from the CWSRF at the interest rate ranging from 2% to 2.3%, depending on the terms as determined by the city's finance committee.
It was 2.37, not 2.3.
Okay, I'm sorry. 2.37. The motion is on, I would like to have a motion, please. We need a motion to waive the reading of the resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. So move. Counselor Phelps, Counselor Hamel, seconded. The second phase of this is I move the second reading of the resolution. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. On the move to waive the reading, we need to take a vote, please. It's moved by Counselor, oh, I'm sorry. 6 to nothing in favor. I'm sorry. The second phase of this is a second reading of Resolution 2022-03, a resolution authorizing the application for $2,500,000 loan from the New Hampshire Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund for Northern Lakeport Area Sewer Project and appropriating funds for the same.
So moved.
Counselor Felch, Counselor moves, Counselor Hamel second. All those in favor? 6 votes in affirmative. The third part of this motion, I move to approve Resolution 2022-03, a resolution authorizing the application for $2,500,000 loan from the New Hampshire Clean Water Safety Revolving Loan Fund for the Northern Lakeport Area Sewer Project and appropriating funds for the same.
So moved.
So moved by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Hamel. All those in favor?
Can I ask discussion?
Excuse me,
Discussion.
discussion, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No, it's not okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I just raised this comment to the rest of the council in terms of, obviously taking the funds from the loan fund makes sense because they're a good rate. But my question is, the 747,600, again, accepting that, but does Mr. Smith know if we could apply that over time? Because again, if we, the goal, I think, is to keep our tax rate kind of level, and whether applying that over time as opposed to reducing the loan balance up front, because what we end up doing is paying it off early, and the people who are going to have the benefit of this improvement aren't going to end up contributing towards it. So that's I guess a strategy that
I'd be surprised you can do that.
well, that if it's possible, that's why I'm asking.
Probably best to answer that question. And the answer is those are opera dollars, which expire in 2024. So it's
That's
not
right.
an option.
Yep, I understood. Thank you.
Is there anyone else, any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? 6 votes in affirmative. Last on the agenda is the second reading of ordinance 2022-189 to amend the city code chapter on source. I am not going to read anything else other than that, and I think we've heard plenty of information, and I think a couple of the councilors asked to speak in reference to this, and I will hear that now. Councilor Cheney.
I have to be honest and tell the rest of the council, I have some sympathy for the concerns of these folks. I know they choose, as someone said to me earlier in the evening, the devil's advocate would suggest they choose to live in a community that, has their own sewer system and their own water system. Nevertheless, they get their water from us, and the sewerage comes back to us. And I would like to know, have Wes, and I know Wes is using a one-armed paper hanger, but it's a pretty serious project. I'd like to know more details, for starters, like how often these inspections need to be done, and he did say earlier that on our portion, it's done every several years. So I want to assume that's going to be true with them as well, but it's not an annual inspection. But I don't know. I'd like to know. I've started reading this. I need more time. But
I understand.
But the other thing I'd like to say is I'd like Wes to give us, if the city had to take over these inspections, including the private properties, what would it cost the city to do those inspections? If they're included, I think you said we do a fifth every year. If maybe we do a sixth every year, what would that cost be? Maybe every year we do a fifth still, but what would it cost us to add some portion of these private roads and private developments inspection to the inspections we're already doing? If it's outrageous, then we'll deal with it then. But if it's a few $1,000s per year, I'd like us to at least consider absorbing that cost. These people, a good many of them, many I know, don't make any demand on local services, police, fire. They don't get garbage collection. They're not bitching about that, but other than today, they're not bitching about that. But you know, they throughout the year, we don't have them in here pounding on the table saying, and my garbage isn't collected. I would like to think that for the services we are fortunate enough not to have to provide them, maybe we could help them with this project. So I'm asking, getting back to the beginning, I'm asking the Public Works Department to estimate a cost to include these privately held systems in our 5-year plan or 6-year plan, whatever we can work out, and what it would cost the city to do that.
Thank you, Councilor
Thank
Cheney. Councilor Cheney, was there anything else?
There probably is, but
Okay, thank you.
I'm unaware at the moment.
Councilor Susie?
This is a question for Wes at some point to
Sure.
come back to us.
Mr. Anderson?
Just using Southdown as an example, we're all the same thing. If anything in those sewer systems breaks today, like they have a broken line happens in the ground, who's gonna take care of that?
They do.
They have to take care of that,
Right.
okay? If we go in there and do these inspections,
Right.
is that like a precedent that we've accepted those lines, then it becomes our responsibility?
We have a bigger problem than that. We have no right to be in there. We have no easements. We have nothing over the sewer lines. So if we're gonna do that, they're gonna have to give us easements.
We shouldn't ask
be
you to
in there.
play lawyer, though. I think that's something we should ask council council to opine on.
Yeah.
I think, you know, before we go in and inspect anybody's property, we would have to have an agreement with them and an understanding, you know, who's responsible if we find something wrong.
And were those sewer lines put in for the city standards? Let me ask you that question.
It's even more complicated than that. Because any new expansion actually gets approved at the state level. So it not just doesn't meet ours, it meets the state's requirements at the same time.
I'm talking about the original.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Whenever there's an expansion of the sewer system, a set of plans goes to Winnipesaukee River Basin and goes to Department of Environmental Services. And they review it and they comment it, and whatever changes they want, we have to do, or the builder has to build.
Council Lippman?
Guess I'd like to take a step further back than where you are, Councilor Cheney, and say, I'd like to hear how other communities that may be ahead of Laconia in addressing this have addressed it. And, you know, are we the first in the tank, so to speak, or are we, you know, where do we fit in the scheme of this? And I understand Laconia is maybe different because of the nature of being a tourist area and having a lot of second seasonal homes, but I'm sure that other large communities have this issue to tackle.
We're also different in the fact that the water treatment plant system is run by Department of Environmental Services.
Right.
So they have more visual oversight of what happens within the 10 communities that are part of the basin program.
Right. But is that some research you could?
We
bring back?
can ask the question.
So at this point, you don't have a.
Because the Winnipesaukee River Basin is the only state-run wastewater treatment system in the country. So there's nothing else that's comparison-wise on that. We can look to see what the others do, but then they're going against rules and regulations that apply to the water treatment system, although they still have to follow the general permit requirements underneath the EPA.
Councilor.
So I'd like to see more of a
Councilor
break.
Phelps? Oh, yeah, floor.
I'd like to see more of a breakdown of some of these that you've listed as to whether they actually need to be inspected by the organizations. Because you've got places like Hillcrest Drive that I know it's a private road, But who's gonna pay for that? Because they don't have an association, they don't have,
There's more pieces that was just the first list that we put together. Because
Right.
as we're getting more information back from the associations, we're learning more. That in the particular case, Hillcrest Drive may be one, matter of fact, it's going through the acceptance process. So it eventually is ours anyways at that point. There was one question that came up before in regards to one village in Southdown Long Bay. Before, in the very, very early stages before Southdown Long Bay was a concept, there was one village that was built and we agreed as part of it, that system was ours. And then all of a sudden, they decided to keep expanding. And part of that agreement was we wouldn't be responsible for the
growth.
for the rest of the growth. So we got one little village, the rest belong to Southdown and Long Bay.
Is that the one up by Parade Road, the Davison?
Yeah, you go
project?
in, it's on the left.
Davison project.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to get more of a breakdown on all these before we
Yeah.
go any further too, so.
Is there anyone else? Counselor Lippman.
So along the lines where I think Council Filch is going, I think in terms of having a better understanding of what the lay of the land is of the different types of situations and being able to sort of categorize them in some sort of system of, no, they don't need to do anything at all, or they've got.
Expect once a
soup to
year, or
nuts, or-
expect
yeah.
5, a fifth of it and have more of a breakdown of each system.
So as opposed, try to look at it as some classification system, so that we don't have 38 different classification
Right.
systems. We have,
We're going to group them into groups, but I will say is we don't know what they've been doing on their systems. So
So-
we'll be making assumptions.
But I
And
think
any
that's-
cost that we generate is only as good as the assumptions that we make.
Right.
so I think it's more important than gathering the cost at this point is understanding what the scope of work is. And so that you're not going to be able to cost it until you know what that is. I mean,
Exactly. Right.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Counselor Ham.
West, you don't need, when is these meetings gonna start?
Part of it is we need to do it right after, we get an agreement from it, because if you're not going to do it, there's no sense in us doing this.
Well, we don't know what the agreement is. So how can we vote on something we don't know? And how can they decide?
But see, you're voting on the general ordinance. We don't want to put them in a box. We want them to have the ability, based off what their system is, to make the appropriate plans for their system. If you want to put them in the box, then we have to change the ordinance, and they're going to have to follow that box with no leeway to it, unless we put the leeway into that ordinance. That's why we did it that way. Even our
See-
permit has a lot of leeway into it, as long as we're showing progress towards meeting the permit requirements.
I think we had overwhelming testimony that the ordinance isn't clear to the regulated community. And so I think we have a responsibility to take it to a different place.
We can do that, but
Yes,
then you lose flexibility to the various organizations.
not necessarily if you come up with classification systems that make sense. I think we obviously need to be respectful of the EPA requirements. On the other hand, we don't want to create a torture chamber for people trying to figure out what they need to do.
But the first question we ought to ask is, what would it cost if we did it ourselves? Because I think you need to get by that.
But we can't even do that if we don't know what the scope is and the number of ones that fit into which box.
I agree.
I think
That's
there's a
why I
lot
said-
of legal questions that need to be asked. Like Wes said, we're not even allowed on the land. It's private land. When you turn into Southdown, there's a gate. You can't get in there. I can't use the beach. I can't use the docks. I can't use nothing. It's private. So, I mean, he would have to find that out of the legal matter.
I'd be hard pressed to believe Southdown or Long Bay or the other 428 organizations that we're talking about are going to say, no, you can't come on our property. But if they do, then they have to pay for their own inspection. I
think
understand
We
that.
gotta find out legally first.
Right.
Because if they go in there, the trucks, whatever, doing the inspections in that there, something happens.
We've got some work to do here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be tough for me to vote for something then I really don't know what I'm voting for. Right now, I mean, I know there's the concept. So. I don't know, I just never voted that way. I have to.
Again, we can pin it down, but then they're restricted to what, you know, what ordinances we put in there.
I mean, can't you? Why can't you have a meeting and just start to whittle through all this?
We can, but part of the problem is we've gotten more people identified from the first article that came out, or who are the presidents of various associations than we ever knew before, because our information
I'm sure.
in the city is so out of date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's the point of a public hearing process, is to tease out stuff so that.
Right.
Yeah. And we appreciate I'll say all the issues coming in, because we start looking at who's the email address and asking them, what are they in the chain of command of the associations?
Is there anything else, councilors? Councilor Ham? Councilor Cheney?
No, thank you.
Okay. Before we close the meeting, I would like to apologize to the council. I didn't mean to cut off any discussion. This has been on-the-job training.
Stop it. You did fine. Thank you.
I'd like to recess the council meeting at 8:36, Madam Clerk.